So, my name is Courtney Wilburn, and I live in Philadelphia. I work at a firm called O3 World. We're a digital agency, digital product agency in Philadelphia, and in the Fishtown neighborhood. And so my talk is called Let's Go Crazy, and it's basically about what Prince taught me about Agile software development. So if you guys are looking for a how-to or a like nitty-gritty sort of meat and potatoes type talk, this is not going to be one of those for you. But hopefully it'll be fun. All right. Get the audio. All right. So just to get a show of hands, how many Prince fans do we have in here? You like Prince? Good, good. All right. Anyone tell me what, if you're one of the Prince fans, can you tell me what your favorite Prince song is?
Let's Go Crazy.
Let's Go Crazy. When you're nice. A good one. Anybody else? Yes. Good one. All right. And who works in an Agile shop? Anybody? A lot of you. It's really hot right now. So okay. I'm just going to go into my relationship with Prince, and it's mostly an unrequited love. But I'm an '80s child. I was born in 1980. Let me backtrack a little bit. My parents had a policy of just no filters when it came to the type of content that we were able to watch, with two exceptions. I couldn't watch Popeye because he had bad grammar, and I couldn't watch Tom and Jerry because of some of the problematic things that were depicted with African Americans in the cartoon. So those were the only two restrictions that we had on stuff we could watch or read. Everything else was completely on the table. So shortly after Purple Rain came out on VHS, my family rented it, because that's what people did in the 80s. You rented videotapes, right? And you would watch them at home together. So we watched Purple Rain. My parents were Prince fans, and they'd probably been listening to a lot of Prince at the time, but I wasn't completely aware of it. And for some reason, watching this movie, it completely clicked. My world completely changed. I was 4. Okay, so I may have been a little bit too young a lot of the content was completely over my head, but the thing that grabbed me was the music. The music was phenomenal. I was completely spellbound. I was obsessed. Within a week of seeing the movie, I was begging to get into guitar lessons, and thankfully my parents obliged. I started taking guitar lessons at the age of 4. And I started just wanting to listen to anything related to Prince. And this is at the height of Purple Rain, like everything. This was the most popular album in the country at the time. It was the most popular movie in the country at the time. They restrung one of my uncle's Fender Stratocasters to play left-handed, because I'm left-handed, and I started taking lessons at the age of 4. And then for several years for Halloween, my parents were kind enough to let me dress like this guy for years. No one got it. This is Matt Fink. I don't know if you guys know who that is. Matt Fink is the keyboardist for the Revolution, and only like a child who's completely obsessed with Purple Rain and with the Revolution would probably know that. He's a Minneapolis-based musician. He's classically trained pianist. Played the Revolution in the 80s. I was dressed like this guy, and I was going door to door for Halloween, and people would just assume that I was a doctor, but I was like, no, I'm the doctor. Dr. Fink. And Prince has sort of had this sort of guiding, he's been sort of a guiding spirit in my life. When I first met the woman who is now my wife, hanging up in her dorm room. This poster. And I was an idiot and didn't immediately think this was going to be meant to be, right? But, so this poster was hanging up and I wasn't like, oh my God, this is the love of my life. There was like a year or two gap before that. And our wedding was Prince themed. So this is one of the tables at the thing. We painted some gourds gold. We had purple and gold everything. Like the fonts were done like Purple Rain. We had like, Baby I'm a Star. Like it was, we pretended like the water fountain was Lake Minnetonka. It was awesome. So let me give you a little bit of insight to my Agile story. So I've probably been active in web development specifically web development for, I don't know, about, I guess maybe like 15 or so years. But I wasn't really familiar with the Agile methodology until about 2009. And so I was working for a university at the time when I found out about the Agile manifesto, and it blew my mind. It completely rocked my world in a way that I hadn't had something completely rock my world since Prince, really. I mean, honestly. These 17 guys in dad jeans, meet in a hotel and, have this impact, this global impact, in the same way that, a musician from Minneapolis, born in 1958, has completely changed my life. But Agile doesn't work in university settings all the time. I mean, people have been able to apply it in the place where I was working at the time. It wasn't so. I was trying to think of ways to incorporate, Agile methodology into the work that I was doing in tiny bits. And just like I'd done in other points in my life, I looked to Prince for the inspiration and insight into how I could apply Agile principles to my work. So does anyone know who this is? Any guesses? Any guesses at all? No? Okay. That's okay. That's okay. You don't have to. This woman is named Susan Rogers, and she is amazing. So if you aren't really familiar with her and her work, you're probably familiar with her work in a way that you're not, that you don't know. She is a behavioral neuroscientist, but she wasn't always. So before then, she was a high school dropout, and she ended up picking up sound engineering as she, just as something that she wanted to do. She was living in Los Angeles. She started working with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and all these other groups, and eventually, after she left the music industry, she got her high school degree, her bachelor's of science, and her PhD at the age of 44, starting at the age of 44. And she was a professor at the Berklee College of Music, and before all of that, while she was working as a sound engineer, she worked with the Violent Femmes, she worked with David Byrne, she worked with the Bare Naked Ladies, but most importantly, she worked with Prince. And not just Prince, working with Prince at any sort of random time. She worked with Prince during the most prolific output period in his career. So from Purple Rain until Sign of the Times, which is roughly from 1983 to 1988. So she's amazing. So. about this. So the reason why I brought up Susan Rogers is because she is able to, Princess generally has been tight-lipped about his production methods, his recording techniques, and all these sorts of things, but within the last about decade or so, Susan Rogers has done a ton of interviews and has given some insight into how he works. And so this has been, and how he worked at the time, at least during that really prolific period. And so I just wanted to give a couple of examples of some of the really neat things that Prince has done recording-wise. And so I just played a clip from the song 1999. That album was recorded in 1982. It was one of the first albums that he did with what ended up becoming the group The Revolution. So the reason why I play the beginning of that song is because you hear those individual pieces of each singer singing. You hear Wendy, you hear Lisa, you hear Andre, and then you hear Prince, and then you hear all of them singing together a little bit in the chorus. But the song was recorded as a chorus together. So like all five of the members of the Revolution were singing together when the song was recorded. So in post-production, they got the bits of the isolated individual bits and just isolated the vocals to make it seem a little disjointed, a little lonely. It kind of adds to the theme of the song a little bit. So that song is called Pop Life, and it's from the album Around the World in a Day. That album came out in, I think, around April of 1985. One cool thing he does in this song is that the audio coming from the left and the right sides are off by like almost a half second. It's like it's discernible, but barely. And you hear it sort of as an echo, but then it feels really like creepy and weird. And the song, it really helps sort of the theme of the song. So bear with me here, guys. So that was Sign of the Times, and that was off the album with the same name. To me, this is like one of the greatest albums of all time. Just period, end of sentence, greatest thing I've ever heard. On the way to school, I would force my mom to play this tape on a loop. I'm sure she probably hated it at some point, but I knew every word to every single song on this album. I was probably the only second grader who could recite this whole thing. It was released in 1987. It was originally supposed to be part of this multiple album thing called the Crystal Ball. Prince later released a 5-disc set called the Crystal Ball a decade later. But it was reconceptualized and edited and then released as a double album instead. And the reasoning behind this was, at least from the perspective of both the sound engineers and some of the record executives at the time, was so that the songs could have an appeal to more of to an R&B crowd, which had apparently felt alienated by some of his other previous releases during that time. So I'm not really sure why, because his music's amazing. He's the best ever, so whatever. that's the song Bambi. It's from the, and the reason why I played that as opposed to any other songs on that album, because that guitar solo is so killer. But it was his self-titled album. This was his second album, and it was released on October 19th, 1979. And like some of his early work prior to working with the Revolution, he did the entire album himself. So when he was his own producer, he would have, basically the audio engineers were his helpers. They would set everything up the way he liked it, set all the levels up, get his instruments ready, and then he would just come in and just do the whole thing. The cool thing about this album and the album prior to that, which was called For You, is that he would play a single instrument at a time for this, and then just go back in and say, okay, now I'm going to do the bass part, and just do the whole bass part for that. And then he would say, now I'm going to just do the drum, and just do the whole drum piece. And that is awesome, in my opinion. I mean, you don't really get that many, so a lot of folks don't do that. I think maybe Lenny Kravitz does that occasionally now, that gets a band to tour with, but Prince was like one of the first few to do that, and I think the reason why Lenny Kravitz does it is because Prince did it, which, whatever. So what does this have to do with Agile, right? I'm just like, am I some random Prince fangirl just like forcing you guys to listen to all this amazing music right now? So what does this have to do with Agile at all? The more I looked at his body of work, and the more interviews that I heard, or books that I read about his recording techniques, I could see clear parallels to Agile principles. So this is just like a whole little gif of like all of Prince's albums up until I think 2010, roughly. So Prince was known for his incredibly prolific output. So this is, I think, one thing that he was able to do is deliver frequently. So between 1978 and 1982, he released an album every year. And then again, between 1984 and 1992, he released an album every single year. That's just releases, actually. That doesn't count the amount of music that he recorded during that time. And then albums where there were gaps, he would sometimes put out 2 albums. So like, there wasn't an album that he released in 1993, but then he released 2 in 1994, and he released 2 again in 1996. And to keep this in mind, he was in the mid to late 90s, he was in the middle of a dispute with Warner Brothers, and was still releasing new output, new songs during that entire period, which is incredible to me. Each album had at least 8 to 10 songs. And this is not including any of the compilations or greatest hits or any of that stuff. This is like all new material. And that's not even including like side projects, right? So he would build projects around motivated individuals. Sometimes he was the only motivated individual, right? Sometimes it was the revolution in the early days when he stopped playing by himself. He was recording with the revolution from that, and during some of that period between like 84 and 89. And then later on he would have side projects. He had Vanity 6 and Apollonia 6 once Vanity left the group, and then he had The Time, and he was basically writing all of these other songs as other people and just letting them release the album. Just here you go, here's your album, here's 12 songs, this is somebody else. So and he gave young musicians an environment that they needed the support that they needed to get the work done, and he was releasing stuff at a consistent pace. So even though now he was releasing all these albums every year, but I think he's releasing another album every year since about 2010. There are like thousands of songs that he's recorded that are completely unreleased. He works at this frenetic pace. So he'll tour, he'll do an after show after the tour, And then he'll be inspired by the feeling of the tour, write a new song, go to the studio, and record an album, like in a day. And then he'll, just leave it. Or he'll maybe release it at some future date. It's kind of incredible. So I'm just going to go through a couple of gifts of Prince because I love him so much. So what did he teach me about Agile software development? Everything, kind of, but nothing, too. I mean, so it can be great to look at, for me, it's been great to be able to look into other industries for inspiration and motivation, and I think Prince has been a good motivator for me in so many other parts of my life. Other talks that I've seen about development, they draw from military or aeronautics or pretty much anything for that matter, but not a lot of them draw from music. And I think it's important for me as a developer and especially since I've been a back-end developer for the most of my career, to see myself as a creative and to see myself as a maker. And much like a musician, there are moments that we need to improvise, and we have to, and especially in an agile environment, we have to think of our clients, we have to think of our customers, we have to develop relationships with our team, with our other developers. And if anyone has done that over the span of their career and stayed active and continue to make high quality work, it's Prince. So that's it. Does anyone have any questions? No questions? No questions about Prince? No one's going to quiz me about, like, Andre Simone's hair color? Okay. All right. Thanks.